welcome in to the Pharmacist and the Photog Games, Brews, and Grub. I am the purported pharmacist alongside the legitimate
the drug maker,
the legitimate Photog and Steve Moss.
I don't know about that.
And we are gonna try to pay attention to what we're doing a little bit. We will confess, full disclosure, we've got the UK LSU game going on over here off to the side. We're going to kind of keep an eye on that. We're recording this on a Tuesday, March the 4th. Is that right?
Correct.
The 4th?
Yep.
Yeah, and so this is senior night for UK. So hopefully they can come out against a not so good LSU team and get a win. But like I just said before we started here, not so good teams have kind of been our kryptonite this season. So,
yeah, there's definitely a pattern to all that. Saturdays especially. Kentucky has not played well on Saturdays. I don't know what the record is, but it's a Tuesday night, so I'm hopeful that on senior day that they can send those guys off on a good note.
Yeah, at least this last week it wasn't us losing to a not so good team. We lost to probably the best team in the country right now, I believe, in Auburn. And I didn't watch much of the game, I'll confess. I watched a little bit of the first half on my phone. I was in Cincinnati for a Broadway show, but I'm kind of glad I was preoccupied.
Well, truth be told, at about the 13-minute mark in the second half, nobody watched the game.
That's right.
Which is just incredible, and we'll touch on that in a minute. I just thought Auburn is just they're head and shoulders better than Kentucky.
Yeah.
Let's give Bruce Pearl credit. He has put together a terrific team. And Janai Broome, who's probably going to win the League Player of the Year and is one of the favorites with Cooper Flagg to win the National Player of the Year. He only had 1 point in the first half. It was the guard play of Kelly Pettiford and Baker Mazzara. I think they combined for, what is it, almost 75 points of Auburn's 94 for the entire game. Kentucky had no answer for those guards. And, once Auburn smelled blood in the water, I compared it a little bit to a friend of mine. It was like a cat toying with a mouse when it caught a mouse, and it played with it for a minute before it, did the deed.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, what Auburn did to Kentucky.
And looking at the stats of the game, the two big ones that stood out for me anyway was turnovers. Obviously, Kentucky turned the ball over 18 times. The other big stat was Auburn made 8 more threes than we did. That's gonna win you just about any ball game if you shoot that well.
And it was a season high in turnovers for Kentucky. And the second half, at the beginning of the second half, Kentucky had 6 possessions to start the second half, 6 turnovers on those possessions. Yeah. And they were all unforced errors, if you want to talk tennis terms. At one point, I think even Jack Givens, who does the color analysis on the UK radio network, was like, these guys act like they've never dribbled a basketball. Yeah. And to your point about the threes, you have mentioned here before, Mark Pope said he wants to get 35 threes up a game.
Yeah.
He shot exactly half of that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if we had gotten up the number that he's hoping for and hit, if you just extrapolate that out, we would have at least been a little bit closer. This game would have been it would have been a little tighter.
It might have been a little tighter, but it's confounding to me that a coach who is so based on analytics and numbers, how do you justify? Maybe justify is not the right word, but how do you? How come Kentucky has not even come close to that number, especially in league play?
Yeah.
And I know that once you get into SEC play, the competition ratchets up, twofold, threefold.
Yeah.
But guys coming off screens, you've got to, it's got to be a fluid motion. We were talking about this in the office today. It's like Kobe Brea, obviously now, by default is really your 3-point guy out there on the floor because of the injury situation. And he's got to be hunting his shot.
Yeah.
He's got to be loaded and ready every time he comes off of a screen and go up with a shot. But for some reason, it's not happening.
Yeah, and it's just kind of frustrating because when you look at some of the other aspects of the game, I mean, we out rebounded Auburn.
Right.
We out rebounded by a handy margin. It was 32-21.
Right.
And we shot a ton of free throws. Everybody was still complaining about the officiating, and I understand that officiating, it can not so much just in the sheer number, but when it happens and when it doesn't happen, that kind of thing. But I mean, Kentucky shot 28 for 38 from the free throw line. That's a lot of free throws to shoot.
Well, it just goes to show you the efficiency of a team like Auburn. They're banking in threes.
Yeah, they banked on two consecutive possessions. I did see that part in the first
and that
half.
was Kelly who banked it in, one from the left side of the court in front of the UK bench, and then he comes right back down on the next possession and throws one off the glass on the other side of the court. I just think Auburn could get whatever it wanted, and Kentucky offered very little resistance.
Yeah, I mean, when they hit that second banked three, I texted you and said, "That's it, we're cooked," because it's a statistical fact that when an opponent banks in a three against Kentucky, I believe we're something like 0-78 or something. I mean, it's absurd.
It's happened. You could probably count on two hands the number of times that this season alone Kentucky has seen a three-pointer go in off the glass.
And it's usually, a walk-on who's never played before and has never scored more than 2 points in his life, and he lights Kentucky up for 15, including a bank three. So anyway, it was I had a little bit of hope that maybe we could capture some of the same magic that we had against some of the other really good teams that we've beaten this year. But obviously when going into that game, you don't have Jackson, and we've been able to survive that, against other teams. But
it's a different breed of
animal. That's exactly right. They're just completely different. But
it's going to take a really good night and a really good team for somebody to beat these guys.
Yeah. And just when you look at, they're battle tested. They've lost two basketball games in the toughest league maybe in NCAA history. So there's not going to be a whole lot shows up in the NCAA tournament that they haven't seen before. Short of them just coming out and having a really off night shooting wise, it's going to be tough to beat them.
Well, and that's where a guy like Broom in the middle can make up for some of that. Yeah. Where if you're having an off night, he was having an off night in the post, and those three guards were picking up the slack and then some. So I didn't think Kentucky had any answers. No disrespect to those five guys on the floor, but there was just not. Kentucky could have played 8 and probably still lost.
Yeah, we got solid games out of Brea. Carr appears to be continuing to recover from his back injury. He looked pretty solid, at least from a scoring standpoint. You'd still like to see your big man get more than 2 rebounds. Amoore, again, 13 and 14. But oddly enough, Wade was kind of a no-show in this game. So.
And they only got 5 points off the bench, which, when you get into postseason play, you got to have more production off the bench. And I go back to, narrowing the minutes down and narrowing down that rotation. Mark Pope doubled down on me Monday night on his radio call-in show. He said, "I'm not doing that."
Yeah.
So here's a guy who's all about the analytics, but this is just my beef with Mark. Is just you've got guys who don't need as many minutes as they're getting. He says that Kobe Brea and Amari Williams can't play 34, 38 minutes, which is what they did against Auburn, and he's got to go back to the bench, and I just disagree.
If we had more bench.
That's the thing. If you had more bench.
But we don't have it. And I get that whole analytics thing, and I understand guys get set in their ways and, always going for it on fourth down kind of mentality. But you also have to kind of look at what's happening right on the floor in front of you, especially we've talked about this multiple times. Early in the game, there's been so many games this season where we've gotten off to a great start. Guys are cooking, and we hit that first media timeout.
And it's like you're hitting the brakes.
And it's not like – this isn't like the platoon squads from back in the day when the 5 you were putting in was going to be – those guys are all going to the next level, and we just don't have that now. So it's a little bit frustrating, and I just keep going back. I've looked at a lot of stuff on social media this week, and I saw one tweet in particular. I wish I could remember the guy's name who brought it up, but he said, "Yeah, I'm disappointed that we didn't win that game and that we weren't more competitive." But he goes, "Then I keep going back, and I've said something similar to this. I keep going back to the fact that Pope threw together this group of guys, man, who are mid-major players, threw them together in a month, and they've already given me more excitement."
I understand, I understand what you're saying, but then how do you go to Georgia and play as poorly as you did, or pick one of those other losses that you're like, how did you lose at home to Arkansas?
Yeah. I mean, and that's a valid, but I guess I keep going back to the fact that I kind of thought the losses to Georgia and the losses to Arkansas were going to be in addition to the losses to Duke and the losses to, Gonzaga. I just never dreamed that we would win some of those games. So I just keep trying to have a little bit of perspective on where we are now. Get us into next year when he's actually got a handful of blue chippers, and you're hoping we're able to hit the portal for some experience, which we're going to need.
Right.
And I think they'll do that. I think just seeing what some of these guys have done coming from the schools that they've come from, I think you're going to see players from across the country show a little more interest in Kentucky in the offseason.
Well, and somebody called in and asked Pope that on his call-in show that I referenced, and he even hinted around. He used the word superstar. He said we're recruiting a superstar for next season. I don't know who that is. I don't know who's out there that's a superstar. Yeah. Cooper Flagg's going to the league.
Yeah,
he's not coming to Kentucky. So, no, I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of holes. Well, there's 6 dudes that are going through senior night tonight on a Tuesday against LSU. There's no guarantees that Garrison's coming back. Kirk Kreese is not going through senior night, so he probably is coming back for college basketball. But where's he going to go?
Yeah, I think he'll stay at Kentucky.
But I think Pope is going to need another big guy. It's going to be hard to replace a guy like Amari Williams who can, who has the knack of finding a guy cutting down the lane from that high post.
He's one of the best big pass or big.
Yeah, he truly is.
I've ever seen.
No disrespect to Malachi Marino, but I don't see him stepping into that role anytime soon.
No.
And I don't think Garrison is suited for that role either. But
I'll be shocked if Garrison
comes back
to Kentucky.
Yeah.
I think he'll transfer. What about Owe? He's a junior, right?
I think Owe comes back because I think he probably enjoyed the experience where he was kind of the guy for, the middle part of the season, giving way to Amari Williams now at the end of the year. I think Owe comes back. I think, NIL probably has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And then his first year of experience with Mark Pope probably was a good one.
Yeah.
I would think.
I would think so.
I think he comes back. I for their sake, I hope he comes back because he's a proven commodity.
Yeah.
And he gives them that leadership, even though he doesn't talk a lot. He could be a guy who leads by example.
Yeah, when you have a game that he just takes over like he did against Oklahoma, that's where you see just sheer athletic, just power that he possesses, which was pretty impressive. But we're going to need him to definitely step it up. Tonight we're playing LSU. I haven't even checked the score, so I don't know where
Last time I checked, it was 15-4. So they had to run out to a big lead and probably going to send these guys off on a big win.
Yeah, but then, Saturday we got to go play a really tough game on the road at Missouri. Missouri's pretty doggone good. Yeah, they're good. So that could very well be an L. It's a Saturday.
Missouri does a lot of their damage, inside the arc. So that's kind of where Kentucky's struggled some this year.
Yeah, I think they may have a tough time doing anything with them. So while I was watching a Broadway show, then at the end of that game, I think you guys were all watching hockey. Is that what it was?
Yeah. So I'm thinking it was just under the 13-minute mark. I'm watching the game at the office, and they go to a commercial, and I'm like, I don't remember that there was a dead ball. Turns out that the production truck, they parked the production truck underneath in the garage at Rupp Arena, and all the cabling for the cameras and the audio goes, through the building out to the court, blah, blah, blah. That's how production works. You can't just plug a truck into the wall.
Right.
It takes way too much power than that. So you have to have power. And so I guess a generator, I heard it was a fan, like a box fan that was cooling either a generator or part of the truck or something, maybe sparked and caught fire. Nonetheless, ABC, ESPN was doing the game for ABC. ABC bought the game from ESPN, and it was like the first basketball game of the year for sure that ABC had televised. And suddenly they go to this commercial, and I'm going, I don't remember a timeout or a dead ball. And then the commercials kept playing. And I'm going, oh, they're not going back to Rupp.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I work in the business. I realize what's going on. You can't just put up dead air.
Right.
So
they knew the game was over.
Well, there's that. But then my reaction was, what if Kentucky had cut it to like 2 or 3 points?
Sure.
Or if Kentucky, heaven forbid, had a lead. I mean, all hell would have broken loose.
Yeah.
And I think I tweeted out, I wouldn't want to be working over at TVQ in their newsroom. I have been there before.
When that kind of stuff happens.
A storm or something has knocked KYT off the air and we're televising a game and that phone just will not stop.
People just go nuts.
Not Kentucky fans, they blame whoever picks up that phone. And people don't understand that we're just the messenger, but I understand their issue. So, it was, in a week's span, you've got the run over of the Vandy Texas A&M game where there was so many fouls called, 34 in the last 5 minutes.
It took 40 minutes.
Yeah, it was more than 40 minutes
to play like a 4-minute stretch.
Yeah. It was so you had that entire run over of the Vandy game, which left Kentucky fans with only about 7.5 minutes of the first half that they got to watch. And then they missed almost 13 minutes of this game. Granted, it was a blowout. Yeah. So, probably did everybody a favor.
Right.
But nonetheless, it was not a good week for ABC and ESPN in these parts of the country.
Well, and like I said to you, ESPN and not just them, but anybody who televises multiple basketball games on a Saturday or whatever, they've got to get away from this 2-hour block. That's just not feasible anymore. With all the TV timeouts, I mean, you could give up some of those, but they're not doing that. And there's too much revenue involved.
Right.
So
it's cramming as many games into a window as they possibly can. And now that referees can go to the table ad nauseum, it's an unlimited. It's like just an unlimited number of times that they can make a trip to the table, and each one of those trips to the table is going to last you a minute, maybe a minute and a half, sometimes 2 minutes. And they're going to the table early in the game for stupid stuff, in my opinion, and then they go to the table late in the game when it's like, do we have to
momentum
keep doing
killers.
this? Yes.
Well, and
especially
the other thing,
for a TV audience.
The big thing about it is if they were going to the monitor, and when you watch even college football and NFL football, when they go to the monitor, I would say that I feel like 9 times out of 10 they get it right.
They also have help from someone in New York,
right?
Someone, a head of officials or a head of the replay who's looking at the monitor. Even, in the SEC, you've got somebody else talking in your ear, helping you out. I think probably they need to go to the rule. I'm trying to remember if it's the NBA or who has it, but, you get like one or two challenges a game. And as long as your challenge is approved, like, I'm challenging this call, and then the officials go, yeah, you're right. You keep your challenge until, you can't. And I think that's the only way probably to solve this problem. I hate to agree with Jay Billis, but he's right. He's like, it's not necessarily the official's fault. It's the rule committee that opens up the interpretation of the rule that allows you to go to the monitor 15 times a night.
True. And there's just times when I'm just like, I don't understand how I just watched the same videos I think that you watched replay wise, and you still got the call wrong. So I don't know. I mean, every now and then some of those out of bounds plays, it's hard to tell whose fingertips it went off of. But then some of them are it's just blatantly obvious that they got it wrong and they don't change it.
I understand you want to take the human element out of it, but heck, when we played, there was no technology and we all got along just fine. And I don't remember ever in my life a call that was so blatantly bad that I wanted to charge somebody, or it's just unnecessary in my opinion. And I think sometimes it depends on personalities too. Some guys like to go to the monitor, the table, and get their TV time.
Yep, absolutely. And we all.
And I hate to say that because I was a basketball official and a baseball umpire, and I work in TV, and it is what it is. Yeah. It's got to change. I'm sure. I thought I heard somebody say that of the SEC games this season, like SEC teams versus SEC teams, there's been one game that has clocked in under 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything else has been over 2 hours, which then goes back to how ESPN stacks games on top of each other. Now all of a sudden they're scrambling and they're moving it to ESPN News, or you can watch it on the app, and
which a lot of people don't have.
It's not user friendly, and I understand sometimes they don't care because then it forces you to buy other product. But it's just not a good look.
Yeah, they need to go. It needs to be a 2.5 hour block, on the TV schedule.
And most of those games that follow, they hold the tip time 6 or 8 minutes anyway, because they know that the game, halfway across the country that they're following is still in progress. Right.
Yeah. So they know it's not going to be done. So, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully they can find some magic. Shifting gears just a little bit to UK women's basketball. They had 2 big games this past week. We won't talk so much about their second half collapse against South Carolina, which they lost. But, again,
it is South Carolina.
South Carolina, just on a different level.
Kenny Brooks said today there was a press conference over at UK, their pre-SEC tournament, talked to the coach, talked to the players. He said, I have coached in a lot of arenas, and he said that game at South Carolina was by far the loudest he's ever experienced, and the entire building at points during the game, they were choreographed to do whatever cheers with towels. I didn't watch the game, but
I watched parts of it.
He said it was a great college basketball atmosphere.
Yeah, and I know what I was kind of laughing about there when you started talking was the fact that I guess it was in his post game, he basically lamented the fact that Dawn Staley just kept running out one McDonald's All-American after another.
That's right.
And what was really cool is I don't know if it was today or yesterday, she actually tweeted out, somebody must have caught her in a parking lot and questioned her about that. And she did the little McDonald's I'm loving it jingle and kind of laughed into the camera. And, when you're recruiting the kind of players that she has, that's easy to do.
And Brooks, somebody asked him about Georgia Amoore and about Clara Strack, 2 UK players who made the All-SEC teams. I think they named 12 first, second, and third teams. Yeah. And Brooks said Kentucky's 2 players were the only 2 out of that dozen that were not McDonald's All-Americans, which speaks to the level of play in the league.
Yeah.
Kentucky will be a 4 seed, which means they get a double bye, which is important because whomever they play will have at least played 1, maybe 2 games.
Sure.
And regardless of who they play, Kentucky's already beaten them once this year.
Right.
So.
Well, and speaking of Clara Strack, the center, the previous game was the biggest victory against University of Tennessee in Kentucky women's basketball history.
Yep.
They won that game 82-58, and I watched that one start to finish. Clara Strack had 23 points and 15 boards. She was a perfect 11 for 11 from the field, which they had no answer for her in that game, and really 82-58, the game was not as close as 24 points.
I didn't pick up the game. I told you I didn't pick up the game. I walked into the house and turned the TV on after you had texted me.
Yeah,
and I think there was 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. And at that point, it appeared to me that Tennessee had just quit.
Yeah,
like they had just laid down and quit. But I was surprised at the margin, and Tennessee's a good, a proud program, a good program. Obviously, and to come in here and lay an egg like that.
Yeah. I mean, at one point, the UK women were up 35, I think was the largest lead. And basically Tennessee did close out the game on like a 13-2 run, which has made the difference in the final score, obviously. But pretty awesome victory for the Cats against Tennessee. That was a good one. So
Georgia Amoore nominated for the Nancy Lieberman Point Guard of the Year award. Now she's in the Final Five. Mm-hmm. I think she was named first team All-SEC. She was also named the SEC Newcomer of the Year. And I asked her today, I said, "You're not new to basketball. How's it feel to win the Newcomer of the Year?" And she's like, it's kind of different. But the league gives that award out to someone who transfers in. It's their first year in the league. So
cool.
One thing that Kenny Brooks did say about Georgia Amoore, and I kind of relate this to when Cal ended up getting John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins. Kenny Brooks said her legacy will live long past just this year, and obviously Kentucky fans, had an enjoyable time watching her play because she is just so good, especially with the ball in her hands. But he said that she makes Kentucky cool.
Yeah, I mean,
I asked her about it today, and I said, "Do you get that vibe from little girls who want to come up and get your autograph?" And she's like, "Yeah, I love it, and I'm going to wave that flag for a while."
Well, and it's cool, like you said. It other players across the country now see what Coach Brooks is doing with the UK women. They see the profile that Kentucky's had this year, and that's how you get those good players to start saying maybe Kentucky is an option. Why not us kind of thing. And
right.
So hopefully that will lead to more of that. Other former Cat news, I've been kind of keeping an eye on. Reed Sheppard finally got a start in for the Rockets
thanks to an injury.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for the guy because he just got picked by a team that doesn't really need him, and but he finally got a start and he scored 25 points, had a great game. So good for him. I really look for the Rockets to trade him because I feel like they're going to look at him and say he's an asset for somebody. We just don't need him right now, and I think they could get some value out of him by trading him.
And after turning in a performance like that last night, coming on the heels of when he was sent down to the D League, and he had 50?
He had like 50 in his first D League.
And his only D League game.
Yeah.
It surprises me that he hasn't forced their hand
and said, "Play me or trade me."
Yeah.
One of the two.
I mean, I don't know how you can trade a guy who's in his first year of a contract, and he was the third pick in the draft, so they owe him some money.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
So they got to play him.
Yeah, eventually I think he'll get his shot, whether it's with the Rockets or somebody else. But the other just ridiculous performance last night was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Well, they were those teams were playing each other.
Yeah. So same game.
Yeah.
Shai Gilgeous goes for 51. That's his fourth game of the season of 50 or more. No other player in the league has more than one. He's in a contract year.
That's 4 in the last 19 games, too, by the way. And I wrote these down because these numbers are absolutely ridiculous. He's in a contract year?
Yeah. He's going to get paid.
Well, he's finished, second, I think, the highest he's finished in MVP balloting. And now he's making a serious push to,
He should be the MVP this year.
Well, you got Jokic apparently having a career year in Denver, so who knows?
Yeah.
Okay, but here are the numbers. He's got 9 40-point games this year. He's got 37 30-point games this year. and he's got 59 20-point games this year. And he leads the NBA at 32.6 points per game.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
I mean,
oh, and by the way, Oklahoma City has the second best record in the league, the best record in the Western Conference. So they're a favorite to get to the NBA Finals, and he's obviously a favorite to win the MVP award.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The Charlotte Hornets still have to be kicking themselves because they drafted the guy, and on draft night they traded him to the Clippers, and then the Clippers only kept him for a year. So, there's some GMs who may be unemployed at this point. I don't know, but you look back on that. But, I mean, Shai Gilgeous was good when he was at Kentucky, but
he didn't start until midway through the season.
That's just not to bash Cal, but I mean, come on. How many guys have we seen just absolutely explode once they got to the league? Just ridiculous numbers some of these former players have put up once they get into an environment where they can do what they are supposed to do. Actually get on the floor. Is a key component to that, I think. But, yeah, pretty awesome to see not only Reed but Shai Gilgeous doing his thing. And you still got, Tyrese Maxey's the man in
who's not the man?
Right now?
Anthony Davis. He's out for the year.
And I was looking at that. Since the trade, the Lakers are 10-2. They went from being the fighting for like a 5 or 6 seed or something in the tournament. Now they're a 2. Playing really well. And then to add insult to injury, now Kyrie's out for the year with a torn ACL.
Sad. I saw the video of him stepping to the free throw line. He's like, I am shooting these 2 free throws. Yeah. He was injured on a play where he was driving to the basket, gets fouled, blows his ACL, but he stays in to shoot the 2 free throws, and then he had to have somebody help him walk off the floor. Yeah. But he made the 2 free throws. I thought that was just very brave of him. And I know that sounds trite, but
yeah,
I really respected the fact that he stood there and shot the 2 free throws. It's like, I'm not going out this way, but unfortunately he does.
And then, and if you're going to kick some people when they're down, kick the Mavs fans when they're down by announcing a ticket price increase.
Yeah, I did see that.
So, no Davis, no Kyrie, no Luka.
I'm assuming that somebody used a computer program, but basically when the Mavericks put out their injured list or who was available or unavailable for tonight's game, it's got Anthony Davis, obviously out, and Kyrie Irving out, and then it had Nico Harris, their general manager, out due to brain damage. I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, man, yeah. So not good if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan. I guess Mark Cuban's probably glad that he sold his controlling interest in the team and kind of took at least a brief step back because, it's not a good time to be a Dallas Mavericks fan. You wanted to talk a little bit briefly about Pete Rose.
Well, sadly, what's come up here in the last week is that baseball commissioner has decided he is entertaining the notion of restoring Pete's eligibility for the Hall of Fame, which Pete predicted. Mm-hmm. I know you predicted it, but Pete also predicted it in probably his last interview before he died. Yep. He said, I think I will be inducted into the Hall of Fame after I'm dead. Mm-hmm. But, it just kind of ticks me off. It's kind of a real kick in the nads for the Rose family. His daughter, Fawn, I think, was the one who sent a petition or a letter to the commissioner's office saying, hey, please reinstate my dad. And so the commissioner has met with her and Pete's lawyer, and it kind of sounds like it's going to happen. I know President Trump pardoned him or said he was going to pardon him last week. And I kind of did some digging. The pardon doesn't do anything. I think you and I had agreed on that, but officially it doesn't do anything other than Pete has had a couple of run-ins with the law.
Yeah.
One was a tax evasion that he spent some time in a work camp or something for.
Yeah.
And then another was he was alleged to have had something with an underage girl, but I don't think he was ever brought on charges for that. So depending on what Trump actually does, the pardon doesn't do anything other than it maybe pushes the commissioner's office to maybe do something.
Yeah. And it frustrates me with just baseball in general in that they've always, especially with the Hall of Fame committee as well, has kind of set themselves as this holier than thou group. And, just like the whole issue with the steroids and all that, because I was a huge Mark McGwire fan, and baseball sure didn't care to ride Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds to increased attendance.
Jose Canseco,
and
those
guys
were juiced,
and
allegedly
that was nothing. It was nothing for Major League Baseball to cut in. They were
turn their back.
They were cutting in on major network television to follow at bats.
That summer may have saved baseball.
Exactly. And, for them to then turn around and say, we're not going to put you guys in. And of course, the Hall of Fame voters, I guess, technically, they're the ones responsible for this. They could make the change, but you've got so many old guys that.
So I did, like I said, I did a little dive on this. So if Rob Manfred comes back and says, okay, I'm reinstating him, I'm reinstating his eligibility is basically what it is. Then he wouldn't be on the ballot for the Baseball Writers of America. He would have to go to the Veterans Committee. It's called the ERA Committee.
Yes.
And then there's two different committees that make up the ERA, like the past and the present. And so the Veterans Committee would then determine whether or not, he gets into the Hall. If Manfred drops that and restores his eligibility, he's in.
Yeah, I would think because you can say what you want. I mean, granted, there's basically one rule as an athlete is you don't bet on your sport. And he broke that rule. So obviously I can get baseball punishing him, but there comes a time when,
it's Rule 21D in baseball.
In Pete's book, or at least one of the autobiographies, that Charlie Hustle book, I think, he talks about how much money he lost by not just not being able to be a manager and that kind of thing, but just not being able to be associated with
capitalize on his name
in any way, shape, or form. And I mean, I feel like the guy more than paid his debt for what he did. And then especially after he came out and said, okay, yes, I bet on baseball. I'm sorry.
And I told you before, I think that's the biggest reason, or one of the biggest reasons that the commissioner's office has been so steadfast in not letting him get in is because they don't want him profiting off of it.
Right.
And if you know Pete, or if you know of his, his gambling and all that other stuff,
it was all about making money.
Yeah, he was not a nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately,
there's no other way about it. You can't sugarcoat it and paint a rosy picture where it's not there. He was not a good dude.
He was a frequent visitor to Keeneland. He was a frequent visitor to what used to be Latonia.
Yep.
Is now, a different name up there. Pete was his own worst enemy.
There's just no denying, though, when you're talking about Hall of Fame.
Well,
I mean, there's no denying what he
hear
did
his numbers?
on the field.
Yeah, he was Rookie of the Year. He was the National League Rookie of the Year. He was a National League MVP. He had 3 batting titles. He won 2 World Series. 4,256 hits will never be approached in my lifetime, ever.
No.
Nobody plays that long.
No.
There's too much money involved. I
believe he was an all-star at 5 different positions.
I think you're correct on that. Third, first, left, right field.
Yeah.
What am I missing?
Nuts. The guy just went and played wherever they needed him to play.
He was all about winning.
Yeah. And that's the other thing about, to me, as far as, betting is so ingrained in sports now that if you think these guys aren't betting on themselves or betting on, it's ridiculous.
It's easy.
But
it's too easy.
You just can't look at Pete's numbers and say, I can guarantee you the guy never threw a game for the Reds to lose. At least
You
that's how
would
I
think
feel,
he would never, but we're assuming a
who
lot.
knows? But anyway, I feel like baseball needs to get off their high horse. They need to put guys like
That's
Pete
exactly
in.
what Trump said.
They need to
Get off your high horse. He said,
that's-
"Get off your ass."
Yeah, I mean, they need to do it. They need to do it with the steroid guys too, because
Well, if you let Pete in, you got to let some of those guys in.
I mean, because baseball turned a blind eye to it. They profited from it, and then they basically turned
Can't
their
be a
backs
hypocrite.
on the guys, right? So, anyway, I think we've beat sports as much as we can. Cats are. I think it's at halftime. The Cats are currently. It's almost halftime. Cats are up 50-23 right now, so they are at least getting the job done. So
makes Dion a happy
yeah,
man.
yeah. At least we're not laying an egg against a team.
You
that
know
we
who
should
is
be
ranked
blowing
ahead of
out.
Kentucky this week?
Louisville.
Your Louisville Cardinals.
Yeah, they are, but they still haven't. But they haven't played anybody.
Oh, here we go.
So
Here we go.
I'll put our strength of schedule up against Louisville's all day long.
They're ranked 12th.
Yeah, that's
Kentucky ranked 19th.
Yeah.
And again, those quad one wins are keeping Kentucky in it.
Yeah, no doubt. Strength of schedule is where it's at. So, and we've done well in that regard. So, we don't have a ton on music this week. Kind of a slow week. We we did our record hunt. Did you listen to any of the ones?
I did, yes.
Yeah, happy
And
with
I
the stuff?
finished up a bunch of. I had maybe a dozen that I hadn't cleaned and categorized and all that. I did all that. Yeah.
Did Judas Priest play all right for you?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. That's
Yeah.
good. But speaking of record hunts, here in Georgetown on Sunday of this week, there's going to be a record swap. And
What is a swap?
I mean,
Are we talking swap meat or are we swapping records?
I guess
you
they
swap Valentine's.
They've got it set up. This is a new thing for them. I've never seen them do it. So it's at the Country Boy Georgetown Tap Room. And I mean, there was a minimal vendor fee to get a table, so I'm going to set up and sell at that. There may not be, I may be the only one. I don't know.
I didn't hear it. I haven't heard it outside of you.
Yeah,
so.
honestly, it's they put it on. I saw it on social media, but that's like the only time I've seen it. So, but who knows with Facebook's algorithms, you can't. I mean, it's not like I don't drink beer. I can't believe I hadn't seen the post more than once. But anyway, if you're free on Sunday, I think it starts at noon here in Georgetown. Record swap. I'll be there selling some stuff cheap, but be a good time to get out and maybe dig through some stuff. And I'm sure I'll end up probably, if there are other vendors there, I'll probably buy as many.
Well, I
as
would hope
sell.
you're not the only one.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a sad show if I'm the only one. I don't have too many to sell. But the other kind of sad note is yesterday, Dolly Parton's husband, Carl Dean, passed away.
Were they
at
married
the age
61
of 82.
years?
Yeah, they were married 60, 61, 62, something like that.
And the guy never once sought the limelight.
No. I mean, you would forget. I mean, I would anyway. See stories about Dolly Parton's husband. I'd be like, oh, yeah, that's right. She's married.
I think I've seen one picture of him from many years ago, but they really kept their marriage private.
Yeah.
Kudos to them.
And they did their own thing through the whole time. I read an article today where somebody had asked Dolly about the fact they never had kids, and she didn't elaborate too much on it. She just said they didn't have kids, and so she was able to focus on her career. Carl did his own thing. He was independent, so he wasn't dragging her down on her time, and so it's kind of cool. She jokingly says that he inspired her biggest hit ever, Jolene, because there was a woman who Dolly thought he was spending a little too much time with, or she was being a little too flirty, and so she wrote the song Jolene.
Yeah, you don't want to piss Dolly off.
Yeah, so she did, she did thank Jolene for making all that money for her. So, but yeah, that's kind of sad. I mean, Dolly Parton is, she's she's just the greatest, I think.
And what is her? She's been to Lexington within the last 4 or 5 months. Is it the Imagination Library?
Yeah, she's a huge philanthropist. So,
Yes,
I mean, she
she
gives
is.
so much money away. But yeah,
Well, she was the first person to step up and give $1 million for COVID shots,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, she helped fund a lot of that research. But yeah, she was in Kentucky recently, and it had something to do with a community library.
I think it's called
initiative.
Imagination
Yeah.
Library.
Yeah, really
for
cool.
kids.
I mean, that would be, I mean, I think it's cool to get to meet famous people, but man, I think meeting Dolly Parton would be.
We did an interview with her as part of her visit here. It wasn't me,
Yeah.
but Amber Philpott was the one who did the interview. But yeah, she's very, from what I've heard and just seen from especially people in our building, she's
What you
She's
see is
very-
what you get, I think.
very
with Dolly.
kind,
very
and,
genuine.
Yes, very available.
Yeah,
Makes herself available to the media. So
yeah. Just
she has become. She's one of those people who she's become an iconic figure, but it's been later in her life.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of cool to see because she toiled in that business for a long time, and on the country side of things, I don't think she ever when country went this way, Dolly just kept going her way.
Yeah.
But now she's been able to branch out and show that she's just an average everyday person, albeit she throws her money at a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and
It's very cool.
She's become one of the few stars that kind of transcends what they do. You can throw out, you can throw out a picture of Muhammad Ali all over the globe. You
Right.
can do the same thing with Michael Jordan.
Yes,
And
or Michael Jackson.
And you can do that with Dolly Parton. I think you
Yes.
can throw her picture up there, and people all over the world are going
right.
to know who that is, or at least know something about her. So that's rarefied air for anybody. But
especially someone of the country genre of music.
true,
So
no
good
doubt.
for her. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing I texted Steve about today, which has got me like totally fanboying, is the fact that one of my all-time favorite artists, Beck, is going to be coming to Cincinnati this summer, and he's going to be backed up by the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra at Riverbend. So tomorrow there's going to be about a 30 or 40 minute time frame where I'm going to be completely unproductive while I'm trying to buy tickets for this show. But it's pretty cool. He did a couple of shows last year at Carnegie Hall in New York, backed up by an orchestra with all these really cool arrangements of some of his stuff. And so he decided to go back out. He's going to do 9 shows in North America. So the fact that he picked Cincinnati as one of them is kind of surprising to me, but I'm really happy that he did. But I mean, he's doing like New Haven, Connecticut, Montreal, Toronto, Chicago, a couple stops in Colorado, and then San Diego. But to come to Cincinnati is a real treat. So I've seen him once about 20 plus years ago. So I'm pretty stoked about getting to see him under these kind of circumstances. It'd be
interesting
pretty
to
cool.
hear him backed by an orchestra.
Yeah.
When I walked in tonight, Dion had him on the turntable. What's the name of that album?
It's called Midnight Vultures.
And the first thing immediately that stood out to me was and I told him, if you were to close your eyes and take the vocal track out of the music, you would swear you're listening to Prince.
Yeah. Yeah. Beck, that particular album, he did an interview years ago where he said he had enough music that if he wanted to do a rap album, he could do that. If he wanted to do a country album, he could do that. And the Midnight Vultures album it leans into that rap funk soul
It's definitely
kind of
funk.
It does have some Prince-esque moments for sure.
Falsettos, the falsetto voice, all of it. I mean, it's
but it's a fun record. It's
controversy.
real
It's
up tempo, lots of synth heavy kind of stuff, but just and in typical Beck fashion for that era anyway, just ridiculous lyrics that make no sense whatsoever. He just pulled rhyming words out. But I mean, when he burst onto the scene back in I think like '96 or something with Odelay, Odelay might have been a couple years later than that. But anyway, that was the album that put him on the map, and he I just remember watching the Grammys that year, and he won a boatload of Grammys and performed, and watching him dance his way around the stage, and watching the rap icons at the time, watching him on the stage with this look on their face, and they're like, "Who's this crazy white dude?
Yeah.
This little skinny white dude up here doing what he's doing."
Weird that I remember some of those.
But I'm. Make no mistake, I'm a huge Beck fan. If you know me, you know that. So excited about that show.
Well, on my way over here, I noticed Rupp Arena announced, I think today, that Hart was making a stop in Lexington.
I had not heard that.
So I hadn't either.
Yeah.
I just happened to see somebody had posted it with the Rupp announcement. So
cool.
The Wilson sisters are still out there kicking it and making music.
Yeah, and they're still good too. I've heard some clips of them from just within the last year, and
I flashed on them. I don't know how long ago it was, maybe a month or so ago, and I'm just wondering to myself, what sister act has outlived them?
Yeah, I got nothing there. That's pretty phenomenal when you look at their career and just the number of hits as well. They're one of those bands too that, even though I wasn't really dialed in to them, when you sit down and listen to
the late 70s, early
it's
80s.
Just like, are you kidding me? There's another great one. There's another great one. And I maintain they are responsible for the greatest cover
of any song
for my money.
Is that where I'm going? Yeah, Stairway to Heaven.
When they covered
Kennedy Center.
They covered Stairway to Heaven when the Kennedy Center Honors did Led Zeppelin.
Ann Wilson. She killed it.
That's, if you haven't seen that, just Google Heart and Stairway to Heaven, and that'll get you.
I think even the three surviving members of Led Zeppelin were impressed.
Well,
because
I think Robert Plant maybe has even said that she did a better job on it than we did.
Well, he hates the song, number one.
Yeah, well, true, but that's pretty high.
I wouldn't say he hates it because his wallet is huge because of it. Yeah. But if there's one song he dreads singing, he has said before, it's Stairway. Yeah. And he always felt like Kashmir was the best thing he ever did anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Kashmir is one of my favorites for sure.
It's a little long, but it's freaking iconic.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. But so my other musical exploit this weekend was my wife and I went to see a touring Broadway show up in Cincinnati. We saw Kimberly Akimbo, which was the Tony Award winner for Best Musical. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. Might have been 2 years ago. Forgive me for not knowing that. But anyway, my wife and kids had seen it on Broadway. I think the night that they went to see that, when we were in New York City, I actually went to about 2 or 3 different record stores.
Yeah,
I went hunting records. I didn't go to the show. And then afterwards, my family they were like, this is one of the best shows we've ever seen.
Yeah, so how can you go to New York City and go record shopping?
Yeah, I mean, I had never been to those record stores before.
Well, so some of them are iconic. Yeah. Those record stores.
So anyway, when the opportunity arose to see the touring show in Cincinnati, I actually bought my wife tickets for Christmas, and we didn't know this until we got there, but the male lead and I guess the male supporting actor in our show Saturday were the original Broadway cast members. So pretty cool. That doesn't happen.
Treat.
That doesn't happen a lot, that the originators of the roles on Broadway then follow it on tour. So that was pretty cool. Great show, very funny. It's a sad show in that it deals with the lead character. She has the progeria, the aging disease. So she's a high school student who knows she's going to die, basically. But the lyrics and music and dialogue is all written. It's very funny. I mean, they do a really good job of not bringing you down for 2.5 hours straight. So really enjoyed that show. Cool. It was good. And we went to dinner. We did the old people thing. I got us tickets to the matinee. So I've started thinking about that now, which I'm fully on board with bands. If bands want to go out on tour, some of these old guys, if they want to reunite, go on tour and do just weekend matinees, 2:00. I mean, I'll come headbang with Metallica and some of those bands at 2 in the afternoon. But yeah, the Broadway knows where it's at, doing the 2:00 matinees. So we did a 2:00 matinee, which got us to dinner for the early bird special, I guess is what the senior citizens call it anyway. We went to a
Watch
place
out now.
up in Cincinnati called the Eagle, which the Eagle is a little mini chain. They've got locations, a couple in Louisville. I think now they've got one in Charlotte, maybe Detroit. I can't remember. I looked, but they have all the meat you want as long as it's fried chicken.
Wow.
That's what they've got on their menus. Fried chicken. You can get.
Is that why it's called the Eagle?
I don't know, but
Bird.
we had heard that it was pretty solid, so we went there, and I gotta admit, it was good.
Better than KFC?
It's a little better than KFC. Now I will say I've had what I think is better fried chicken. I thought, to me, fried chicken's all about the crust. Their crust was good, but it wasn't the best. Chicken itself was good, but where this place has got it going on, I think, is their side dishes. So we ordered a half a chicken, and then ordered a variety of sides to share. So we did like sweet potato casserole, some jalapeno grits. I think what else we had? Collard greens, and I'm drawing a blank. Macaroni and cheese. That was our other one. And had some good drinks. They had a great craft beer list. Had a couple of local, like Cincinnati area and Columbus beers. My wife had a really nice blackberry lemonade cocktail. Very solid. But yeah, highly recommend if you're in the Louisville area or Cincinnati area, the Eagle. The one in Cincinnati is in the area they refer to as Over the Rhine, OTR, so a little north of actual downtown Cincinnati, but still it's only like 5 minutes, a few blocks away. On a summer evening, it would be walkable from where we were at the show. So good stuff. What do you got? Anything?
I got nothing on the food side of things.
Yeah, we need to work on that as we inch towards warmer weather. I don't know about you. We tend to get out and do a little bit more, and I think as the weather warms up, we might talk a little bit more about our own food. At least I know I will, because I when it gets warm weather, we start grilling.
I did grill a steak the other night.
Yeah. And I'm on vacation
in the dark.
I'm on vacation next week. And I've looked at the forecast, and there's a couple days. It's supposed to be 70, 75 degrees, which early March in Kentucky, if we can get 70 degrees, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Of course, then by the end of the week, it'll snow.
Right. They're still calling for snow.
They're talking about a polar vortex or something. So yeah, that'll work, I think, as far as our weather's concerned. But
by the way, Kentucky dropped a 50 burger on LSU in the first half.
Yeah, they're roasting them right now.
29.
Lastly, I'll just very briefly talk about. I'm going back to the guys from Louisville. I think our last episode I did an Atrium beer. This is another one from Atrium Brewing out of Louisville. It's called Beans. It's barrel aged beans. It's a imperial stout that they brew with a collaboration with a local coffee company. It's so good. I've had this one before. It's big. It's sweet. It's got just a ton of chocolate. Honestly, the coffee's not huge in this, which I kind of like it to not be just overpowering. But it's just a sweet chocolate, both on the nose and when you taste it. Really good stuff, and it's a big one. It's 13.5%. But well done.
Got to drive home.
Yeah. That's why I always pour Steve. If you watch and you are wondering why does that guy get the little one, I'm being stingy. But yeah, he's driving. He drives across town, so I don't want to. And I do have a tendency to lean towards these beers that are a little bit bigger. So it's probably not a good thing to send Steve. I did him a favor by not going with an IPA this week. I know he probably is going to be more likely to.
I'm more of a mixed drink kind of a cocktail guy opposed to a beer.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to trying new things.
Yeah, this one's solid. Again, Atrium, one of my favorite breweries in Kentucky. So if you're in the Louisville area, definitely hit them up. I think I just got this one over there a couple weeks ago. They still had to be several bottles of that left in the cooler. So a little bit of a splurge, but worth it. Worth every penny, as all their beers are. So I don't think we have anything else. So we'll hopefully next week.
Postseason's around the corner.
Yeah. hopefully next week we can talk about the fact that we've squeaked out one on the road against Missouri. That's going to be a tough game. There's just no other way to look at that one.
Yeah, I think heading into these last two games, I think everybody was saying if you win one of them, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
Now it looks like, this game is out of hand and Kentucky will defeat LSU pretty handily. Yeah. And now if you can just go to Columbia and get a win against a good Missouri team.
Yeah. I think if they do that, well, I mean, I still feel like we're fine for the NCAA tournament because I'm not real crazy about the thought of us being a 5 because that 5-12 is always nasty. But I feel like if we can win in Missouri, I don't think what we do in the SEC tournament is really going to have a whole lot of impact.
Well, you're probably right, but I think to help your resume, you've got to go to Nashville and win one game at least.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna have to face Auburn. So we know how that went the last time.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
And I think Kentucky, did itself a favor by winning all those quad 1 games because some of those losses are unexplainable to me.
I wish we could get Arkansas in the SEC tournament, but
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
No, it would have been nice to be able to avenge that loss because I do think another crack at them.
Then the latest thing I just flashed on. The latest thing I saw tonight was I think it was Lenardi. I'm trying to remember who it was. Had Kentucky again still a 3 seed, a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, and they're not in the Duke bracket, which people were trying to say because there are going to be so many SEC teams, especially a couple of at least SEC teams are going to be 1 seeds, that Kentucky would not be in like Auburn or Florida's bracket, which means it's looking more and more like they'd be in the Duke bracket, but in this one they weren't. I can't remember if there was an SEC school as the 1 seed, but they were not. They were opposite of Duke.
Yeah, I mean there's just so much.
The second number 1.
So much is going to happen over the next 2 weeks, and let's face it, we pay so much attention to Lenardi, and good grief, man, I couldn't tell you the last time I saw a bracket that was like, oh yeah, he nailed that.
He's got the cushest job in America.
Yeah, I mean
clickbait every week.
Yeah, I mean, and the only people that are paid to get it wrong more often than him are weathermen. I mean,
yeah.
As
long as you're hitting 50%, you're good.
Yeah, so Lenardi just happened to get lucky and coin a phrase in bracketology, and
sure did.
More power to him. So good luck to the Cats and getting into where Joe says they're going. So I don't know.
Kentucky up 30 now against LSU.
Yeah, so I think there's still 17 minutes to go. So LSU does have the memory of the Bayou or the Mardi Gras Miracle or whatever they called it when we came back from 30-something in the second half.
31.
I don't think that's going to happen in this one here as Carr goes in and scores.
Well, the few times I've glanced up, LSU has not offered any resistance.
Looks like an all-star game out there.
Yeah,
right
it's Olay defense.
Yeah, they're just trying to not get guys hurt, I think, which is fine. Let's stuff the stat sheet, I guess. So, all right, well, we'll shut it down for tonight and hopefully have some interesting stuff to talk about next week. But until then, just watch some good games, listen to some good music, and eat some good food and beverage. We'll see you next time.